How do you define the word success? Welcome to the Relive the Moments podcast. I'm John Lim. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, John Lim, and today we're talking about something that every single one of us struggles with at some point. Starting. That thing you've been thinking about for months, maybe even years. The project, the podcast, the business, the change. It all begins with one step. But taking that first step, that's where most people get stuck. So in this episode, I want to break down how to turn ideas into action. How to move from thinking about it to actually doing it. And this isn't theory, this is real. Lessons I've learned firsthand from building my own projects, starting this podcast, and watching others make their ideas come to life. Let's start with the biggest myth. The idea that there's a perfect time to start. There isn't. I used to tell myself that once I had more time or more money or more clarity, then I'd start. But I've learned that waiting for the right time usually just means waiting forever. If you want to start something meaningful, the right time isn't when everything is ready. The right time is when you decide to begin messy, unpolished, and unsure. Because momentum doesn't come from clarity. Clarity comes from momentum. You figure it out while you're doing it. When you first get an idea, it's exciting. You're motivated. You're dreaming big. But that initial rush fades fast. And that's where most ideas die. Here's what I've learned. The difference between dreamers and doers isn't talent, it's structure. When I get an idea, I don't let it live only in my head. I write it down. I break it into steps. I create accountability around it. You can't execute what you can't see clearly. So the first step is to define it. What is the idea? Who is it for? Why does it matter? What would it look like if you actually started tomorrow? If you can answer those questions honestly, you're already moving. I used to think big moves required big resources, but I was wrong. Most great things start small. They start with a conversation, a sketch, a list, a single recorded episode. This podcast, for example, it didn't start with a perfect studio or production plan. It started with an idea, a purpose, and a willingness to take that first awkward step. That's the secret. Start before you're ready. Because when you take small steps, you build real progress, and progress builds confidence. Let's talk about fear, because it's always there. The fear of failing, the fear of being judged, the fear that your idea won't be good enough. But here's the truth. The fear doesn't go away. You just get stronger at walking with it. What helps me push through is remembering why I started. When the purpose is strong enough, the fear gets quieter. And something magical happens. Once you take the first real action, fear loses its power. You realize that most of the things you were worried about were just stories in your head. This is a big one. Motivation feels great, but it's unreliable. If you rely on motivation to take action, you'll start and stop over and over again. What you need instead are systems. For me, that means scheduling time for creativity. It means having a process, weekly planning, setting goals, tracking progress. Systems make things happen even when you don't feel like it. Motivation starts things. Systems sustain them. When you start something, expect it to change. Expect it to evolve. The podcast you launch won't look the same 6 months later. And that's a good thing. Too many people quit because their first attempt doesn't match their expectations. But what they forget is that you can't improve what doesn't exist. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. Be flexible. Be open. Let your idea grow. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep going. No one builds something meaningful alone. When I started this podcast, I had ideas, but I needed people. I needed a team. Working with Kai Visions, Claudio, and Anastasia, it reminded me that execution isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about building with the right people. So if you're sitting on an idea, start by finding someone who believes in it too. Someone who will push you, support you, and keep you accountable. Here's the most powerful part. Once you start, things begin to move in ways you can't predict. Doors open, people appear, opportunities you couldn't see before suddenly start showing up. That's not luck, that's motion. When you take action, you send a signal to the world that you're ready, and the world responds. If you've been sitting on an idea, waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan, I'll tell you this, start now. Start messy. Start scared. Just start. You don't need to know the whole path. You just need to take the next step. Because one day, you'll look back and realize that the hardest part wasn't the work, it was the waiting. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Relive the Moments. If this message hit home, share it with someone who's been thinking about starting something but hasn't yet taken that first step. Remember, ideas are easy. Action is rare, but once you choose to act, you'll never see yourself the same way again. I'm John Lim, and this was From Idea to Action. Until next time, keep building, keep creating, and keep moving forward.